All right. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're joining from, everyone. My name is Emily DeRosa. I am a recruiting specialist in the Graduate School of Engineering here at Northeastern. In today's open house session, we are going to dive into the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering and all of the programs that they offer. As a reminder, we do have the Q&A feature enabled. So throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit any questions that you have. A lot of your questions will probably be answered through the duration of the meeting today, but we can definitely go through those questions at the end and make sure that we get everything answered so you feel here having all your questions answered. Quickly, before we get started, I just like to cover our code of conduct. During these Zoom meetings, we do look to have a very supportive and encouraging learning environment. So if you do have questions, please post them in the Q&A. If you have questions about your own personal application, we unfortunately can't dive into that in this setting, but we will give you plenty of resources to reach out to after the fact. We can dive right into your application on a more one-on-one setting. So just a reminder to maintain a respectful environment, and we look forward to getting to know you all and answering your questions today. So with that, I do have some faculty members from the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering joining us today who are going to dive into this presentation and tell you everything you need to know. So I'm joined by Professor Amy Mueller as well as Professor Andrew Myers. We have David Dieter on as well, who is a member of their department, and Orja Shetty, who is a current student. We will dive into the student ambassador slides a little bit later on in the presentation, so you can get a current student perspective as well. So with that, I will pass it along, and I will be back later to end off the presentation. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. So hi, everyone. Good to see you all. So my name is Andy Myers. I'm a professor of structural engineering. Been at Northeastern for 13 years now, and Amy and I together lead the graduate program across the department. So we'll give you a taste of all the different programs that we offer in terms of curricular offerings as well as research activity that the department is up to. Here's a picture of our Boston campus. Amy and I are both on the Boston campus right now. Northeastern has expanded to 13 campuses across the world, with headquarters here in Boston. I grew up just outside the Boston area, and so then I did my undergraduate and graduate studies in different parts of the country. But I'm thrilled to be back living and working here in Boston. I mean, I just think it's a wonderful place in terms of culture, in terms of professional opportunities, in terms of natural beauty. There's just a really, there's many things to offer. Obviously, there's many fantastic educational institutions in the area, including Northeastern. And, I'm just always kind of, anytime I have a new idea or a new area I want to expand into, I'm always amazed that there's a community here kind of ready, established, and ready to kind of support whatever I'm up to. So there's just a lot of opportunity in the area. And I just love living here. Our campus is kind of right in the heart of Boston. We have two subway lines that go right through the heart of campus, as well as a commuter rail and a bike trail. So we're really well connected to all of the restaurants, museums, and other culture that Boston has to offer. So, yeah, Amy and I lead the Civil and Environmental Engineering graduate program. We are a dynamic department. Every year we've been expanding that I've been here for over a decade. It's really exciting to be a place that is kind of constantly growing, constantly looking at what the next opportunity is, and sees clearly so many important issues that civil and environmental engineering education provides the skill set to solve. And we'll kind of highlight a few of those in the research realm as part of our remarks today. Next slide, please. Okay, so some high-level overview numbers of our department. So kind of core faculty, we're nearly at 50, as with many affiliated faculty as well. Among that 50, we have more than 10 who are joint appointments, which means that they have a position partially in our department and partially in another department, and sometimes in another college. And Amy can maybe speak to that because she is one of our more than 10 joint appointments. This is a reflection of how much we value interdisciplinary thinking, research, and education. As you see, when we go through our programs, we also have interdisciplinary graduate master's programs as well. So it's in the heart of what we're thinking about and reflected in our faculty. You can see the numbers for our graduate program, more than 200 students total, about twice as many master's students as PhD students. We're the largest undergraduate program in the country for private universities with over 400 undergraduates. We are very well connected with industry, and many of our researchers are pursuing use-inspired research, which involves a tight connection to industry. So we're kind of well aware of what the industry problems are, and we're looking for projects that can, at least in my case, have near-term impact in solving the many kind of problems that society is facing and industry as well. We do about a little over $50 million in research funding. And we're organized, at least at the curricular level, into several core disciplines. So construction management, a relatively new offering called data and systems, environmental engineering, geotechnical engineering, structural engineering, which is the group that I'm a part of, transportation, water, environmental, and coastal systems. And then, like I mentioned, we have a kind of a core thread running through our department of interdisciplinary, including a PhD degree in interdisciplinary engineering. Again, very high level, we organize our research thinking into three different thrusts, and those are civil infrastructure security, environmental health, and sustainable resource engineering. Next slide, please, Emily. All right, so here's the 50 or so faculty that are a part of our department. So just to keep things organized, we assign faculty to different thematic areas, as you can see in the text above the profile images of each of the faculty. But really, this is just for organizational purposes. There are so many cross-links between these groups, and as well as groups outside of our department as well. Highlighted in yellow, just as one example of the cross-group collaborations, are the faculty who are participating in our data and systems program, which is a program that Professor Miller pioneered several years ago and we'll be talking about today. Next slide, please. So yeah, as I mentioned, we're on the move. We've been growing every year that I've been here. It's so exciting to be part of a civil and environmental engineering department that is growing, that is innovating, that is constantly questioning how can we do better from an education and research perspective. So we're a very dynamic department. We kind of center our thinking on urban engineering. We're an urban campus right in the heart of Boston, and we see so many urban societal problems that civil and environmental engineers can solve. So, we're developing new generation of solutions for complex urban regions, such as the Boston metro area. Next slide, please. So here's a vision of our department. And Emily, I think there's three animations here. If you would just click through those. Maybe there's four, yeah. So we have, urban engineering is the core of our department. And that kind of maps onto those three research thrust areas that I mentioned: environmental health, civil infrastructure security, and sustainable resource engineering. We then kind of have our traditional disciplines, which are shown in the black text at the intersections between several of our cross-concentration research areas. And you can see those listed in white text. These then map on very cleanly to the Northeastern University's research initiatives, which are health, sustainability, and security. Next slide, please. All right, so now I'd like to just give you a taste of a few of our 50 or so faculty to give you a flavor of what their interests are in terms of research and education, just to give you a sense of some of the things that we're up to. So this is Professor David Fannin. He is one of those joint appointments that I mentioned at the start of my remarks. So he is jointly appointed between our department and the School of Architecture, which has obvious intersections of interests. David and I actually, for a few years, co-taught Capstone, where we had teams of structural engineering students paired up with teams of architects working on interdisciplinary undergraduate capstone projects, which is a really kind of great way for the engineering folks to get to know how the architects think and vice versa. So in terms of research, David is an expert in energy usage and the modeling of buildings. We have several faculty who are focused on this. So he's looking at high performance buildings that kind of perform well, are sustainable, but don't sacrifice the standards in terms of human comfort that we are accustomed to in our society. Relative to education, he is the director and one of the pioneers of one of our newer master's program, which is the Masters of Science in Sustainable Building Systems, which I'm happy to answer questions about if anyone is interested in that particular program. Next slide, please. All right, and this is Professor Arup Ganguly. Arup is an international leader in the impact of climate change on civil infrastructure and the environment. One example of his international leadership is back in 2018, he led the artificial intelligence section of the National Climate Assessment. Moreover, another example is he's a member of the United Nations Environmental Program Review Panel. So he's looking at these kind of complex interactions between infrastructure resilience and extreme stresses or pressures on infrastructure. So whether they be natural pressures, climate-induced pressures, or human-made pressures, trying to understand how our infrastructure will respond to those pressures and what we can do to mitigate any damaging consequences from, say, a flood or a hurricane or something like that. Next slide, please. This is Professor Ali Turan. And so he used to lead our construction management program at the graduate level. But he's an expert in construction management. The image behind his profile image there is from probably about 3 or 4 years ago. That now is a spectacular new research building called the Interdisciplinary Science and Engineering Complex. Just opened up about a year and a half ago, and has a fabulous maker space, as well as research spaces and other opportunities for students to use. So Professor Turan is a member of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's Major Construction Review Unit. He's a former president of the Boston Society of Civil Engineers. His research is looking into developing systematic approaches for estimating construction contract time. And he also is looking at risk. Many of our faculty are looking at risk. He's looking at it from a perspective of construction management. So how do we assess risk to construction cost and schedule uncertainty, budgets and schedules that don't meet the estimates, and how do we deliver projects that meet cost and schedule estimates? Next slide, please. Here is Professor Ed Begley. And so Ed Begley is very active with NASA's initiatives. And so he's using satellites to monitor all sorts of possibilities for kind of things that satellites can measure and can inform human decision making. So he and I have been collaborating about how we can use satellites to monitor offshore wind energy infrastructure, which is an area that I'm really eager to pursue with him, and hopefully we'll land a project with him soon. But his core area is looking at riverine discharges, and satellites can measure kind of how river flows and levels are changing, and how those changes then impact decisions that municipalities have to make in order to respond to changes in water levels or riverine flow rates and things like that. But there's really a whole broad set of opportunities that satellites can be used for monitoring things that will inform decisions relevant to civil environmental engineering. And so he kind of works with many faculty across the department to use this tool, these NASA satellites, in order to solve civil and environmental engineering problems. Next slide, please. All right, and then this is what I work on. So I work in wind energy, onshore and offshore wind energy. Offshore wind energy is an industry that is just getting launched here in the United States, with Massachusetts leading the way for the entire country. So the first kind of commercial scale offshore wind energy project is the Vineyard Wind Project. It's about 20 miles off the coast of Massachusetts, and it's been in construction for about a year now. So it is really exciting to have been a part of establishing this industry here in the US. And I am really excited to see where it goes. And I see so many opportunities for civil and environmental engineers to help get this industry going faster, which to me is a critical one for the future energy generation landscape of the country and of the world. So I look for problems, issues, things that are slowing the offshore wind energy industry down that a structural engineer can solve. And my methods include experimental methods. We have a facility that we'll tell you about in our Burlington campus where we can do large-scale structural testing. And I also do numerical work where, for example, I assess things like what is the risk of infrastructure damage due to hurricanes as we build up more and more wind farms along the mid and north U.S. Atlantic coast. I work with startup companies as well. So for more than 10 years now, I've been working with a startup company that has a really innovative manufacturing process for wind turbine tower manufacturing. When I started working with them, they were a 2-person startup out of MIT, and now over 10 years, they now run a factory in Texas that makes 100-meter long towers with a really clever manufacturing process that has a lot of promise for reducing costs and solving some other problems of the wind energy industry. And next slide, and I'll pass it over to Professor Miller.
Great, thanks, Andy. So I am going to pick up with a few more of our faculty and some of the research going on. So what you're seeing here is a mobile air quality monitoring van, which is actually a mobile lab. So this is operated by Professor Yang Zhang. She is the lead of actually a 15 faculty project that's thinking about urban air quality from pretty much every dimension. So as Professor Myers mentioned, the interdisciplinary thread is really core to the nature of our department. And this project brings together not just many different people from the department, from energy and transportation and air quality science and modeling, but also from other colleges. So thinking about the health impacts, the social science impacts, and trying to do that in a holistic way. The other really unique part about this work is that it's being done in the communities. So we have 2 municipalities that are partnered with that project, as well as a number of community-based organizations. And all of the work is really being done collaboratively. So that's kind of taking the idea of interdisciplinary work and use-inspired research and really putting it into action, where our project is from the very beginning being developed and implemented in partnership with our non-university collaborators. Next slide, Emily. So next up is Haris Koutopoulos. He's on the transportation side of the world and is really a world expert in how we can optimize transportation systems. So we often think about that as maybe buses or subways, but his work actually connects all different kinds of transportation systems. So we can start to think about the blue bikes and bikes you can check out for one-way trips, and Uber and Lyft kind of short trip on-demand transit, as well as the public transit systems and how all of that connects to sort of demand on the roadways. So his work has resulted in redesign of a number of public transit systems, so bus lines to be more optimized for ridership, but also to improve ridership on different systems around the world, really, not just in Boston. Next slide, Emily. All right, so coming back to sort of the logistics of this meeting, we have here a list of all of the different degrees that we offer in the department. And some of these you'll see are the more traditional, typical a civil engineering degree or a civil and environmental engineering degree. But the majority of things we've listed here are really showing the commitment on the education side to this interdisciplinary perspective. So we've mentioned a few of these already. I will highlight the MS in Climate Science and Engineering, which is a brand new degree we rolled out this year. It's collaborative between the College of Engineering and Science. So it's a degree that's given jointly between these 2 colleges. And the intention is really that students coming through this pathway learn how to be collaborative team members in tackling really challenging problems in the climate space. So the core curriculum covers both the science and engineering part and is intended to bring people from different disciplines into the classroom together. I think that's very exemplary of the kind of perspective that our faculty have and the kind of research we have. One more that I might highlight, because it was mentioned earlier, was in our concentrations under the civil engineering degree, we have both some more traditional concentrations, so environmental structures, transportation, these kinds of maybe more familiar concentration names, but data and systems is one we introduced 3 or 4 years ago as a cross-cutting initiative. So it's students from kind of any perspective. So it could be an interest in transportation, an interest in structures, but who want to get the skill set in data and data analytics, AI tools, and think about how we take these burgeoning tool sets, maybe from other disciplines, but adapt them to the problems and challenges that we in this department really care about. So I'm the faculty advisor for that concentration, and I can say to date, we have had students come from pretty much every single other discipline in the department. It's a highly varied group. We get together once a semester, and it's always really interesting to me how many different projects these students are working on, but that they all still have this connection point where they can talk about the tools that they're using. All right, next slide, please, Emily. So for the Master of Science degrees, they all sort of map onto the same template. There are 32 semester hours in general. There are a few exceptions to this I can mention in a moment. That 32 semester hours at Northeastern means 8 courses. Those courses are divided between required core and some electives. For each degree program, that looks a little bit different because the core has a different set of things that we want to cover. The details are very clearly laid out on the website for each of the different degrees, but it's also something that we could talk about today in Q&A. For any program, there are 3 different options for moving through the program. One, you can just do coursework, so 8 classes, and that gets you to your 32 semester hours. Or if you're interested in research, you can do a small research project, which would be under this report option, where that's 1 semester class of 4 semester hours, where you do a small research project with a faculty member. And the other option is to do a formal thesis. So that's 2 semesters long, 8 semester hours total project. And at the end of that, you write and submit a formal thesis. Students come into the program, I think, very oftentimes agnostic, maybe not decided yet about which one of these pathways they want to take. And that's okay. You don't have to declare it in the application. You don't have to declare it when you arrive. Students meet faculty in the first semester through their classes, through community events that we have in the department, and then start to think if there's a match and if there's interest from them in doing some research. So that's something that you can have in the back of your mind as an option. I mentioned that there are a few exceptions to this 32 semester hour rule. They're primarily associated with combining the degrees with another certificate, which I think we'll mention on a future slide. The PhD degree, for those of you interested in that, sorry, Emily. The PhD degree has 2 different pathways. It depends whether or not you have a master's degree when you start. So the first line, 48 semester hours, that's if you come in only with a bachelor's degree. And the 20 semester hours is if you come in with a master's degree already. So those are also described on the website, and we could talk about different pathways if folks are interested. The PhD degree has a typical pathway to pretty much any university. You come in and start classwork. In the kind of 2nd or 3rd year, there's a qualifying examination, which is a deep dive into the academics that you've been studying and a preliminary research presentation. And then after that, you get into full-on research mode. About a year later, you put in a proposal for what you want your PhD dissertation actually to be about. You form a committee and they support you through the last 2 or 3 years of the research, after which you actually do a formal defense to the public. All right, next slide, Emily. So here's an example of one of the certificate programs that our department administers. And this is, again, an example of us trying to build connections across different disciplines and across different perspectives. So this program in sustainability engineering is intended to be available to engineering students, but also to give some engineering vocabulary and know-how to non-engineering students to promote an ability for everybody to collaborate on hard problems in the discipline of sustainability. So this actually has a partner certificate that's in process through the College of Science in sustainability science. And we're working towards multiple different perspective-based versions of this certificate to help our students generally become more well-rounded. We go to the next slide. And here's one more example. So I said we have a new MS degree in climate science and engineering. This is a smaller certificate program in climate and engineering if you wanted to add this on to another degree. So this one is only 3 classes. It gives you a technical kind of concentration on the climate side of CEE. And you can do this in parallel to any other master's program. So you can think of it as sort of like a minor for a master's degree, and it can add on to any other program as long as you just coordinate with your faculty advisor to make sure that the classes line up for the requirements of both the MS degree and the certificate program. Next slide. Thank you. All right, so 2 labs that we have in the Boston area that we quickly wanted to give you an introduction to. Many of you might know we actually have many labs also outside of the Boston area, but today we'll just talk about the 2 near Boston. The first is in Burlington. The Costas Institute is a housing place for many very interesting research labs that maybe wouldn't fit on the Boston campus or have a partnership with the Department of Defense or other kinds of needs that made them demand a bit more space. So for 2 examples, our department actually has a lab out there that can test very large structures. And this is unique across the country just in terms of the kind of testing that we can do. So that could be anything from new types of structures, new materials, earthquake resilience, anything where you want to test a structure to failure and understand what that failure mode is. And I'm talking things up to, Andy can correct me if I'm wrong. When I was there, I think it was 50, 80 feet long beams. So incredibly large structures. So we're talking actually at size testing. The other really interesting facility here, well, one of them is there's a drone testing facility. So you can test new types of drones, but also deploying drones to do different kinds of things. I know people who are doing this for mapping of surfaces. So you could think about road maps, looking at the pavement quality. You could think about actually looking at buildings, building LiDAR models of natural systems. There are some people thinking about water sampling with drones. All of this needs to happen inside of a controlled environment because we're in a big urban environment and there are rules on the airspace. So this is a unique facility that we have in the Boston area. All right, next slide, please. And the other lab that's near Boston is Nahant. So these are both about a 15, 20-mile drive from the main campus in Boston. Nahant is in a very unique area on an isthmus out in Boston Harbor. You can see in this photo, it's completely surrounded by water. There's just one road that you drive in. And this facility houses many of the joint appointments that were mentioned earlier. So folks who are in civil and environmental engineering, but also in the marine and environmental science department. The research here covers everything from pure ecology questions, so the health of seagrass or oysters in the face of climate change, fisheries health, all the way to sea level rise and coastal change, ocean acidification, instrumentation, marine robotics. And so it's a very interesting and multidisciplinary place to work. So I have a lab there. I really enjoy my time there. It always sparks conversations that you wouldn't maybe find otherwise. And there are always opportunities for students to undertake research projects up at this lab. All right, next slide. Okay, I think this is where I hand it back to Professor Myers.
Yeah, thanks. So I wanted to touch upon our co-op program here. Northeastern is a pioneer in integrating co-op education with a traditional course-based education. So at the undergraduate level, we've been doing this. Our department actually established the co-op program 125 years ago. So we've got a big celebration in November to celebrate that we've been at this for 125 years. At the graduate level, we've since expanded to offer co-op opportunities at the graduate level. And right now, maybe about a quarter of our master's students, something like that, do integrate a co-op placement as part of their program here. We have 2 full-time staff within the department whose job it is to connect employers with students, to make sure students are ready to go out on a co-op placement, and to make sure that that it's a mutually beneficial arrangement where the employer gets production out of the student and the student gets enrichment that is integrated with their education. Next slide, please. So Jess and Nora, their role, so they engage with the employer. So they're always looking to develop relationships and find new opportunities. I'm now working with Jess to try to find new opportunities in the offshore wind energy space, and we just got our first placement this week, which was a nice accomplishment, with more to come. And so they connect the connections of what the employer needs with what the student wants and aspires to do, and wants to build up their skill set for whatever they decide to pursue after they finish here. On the student side, they meet with students to figure out what their interests are, to help them with professional development in terms of how to interview and write a resume, what the process is for finding and selecting a job and applying for it, how to utilize LinkedIn to leverage your network, and just to prepare generally for the working environment. Next slide, please. So I'll let you, this is a lot of text, and I'll let you read it all on your own during the recording, or this is all on our website, but I'll just hit a few highlights here. There are some requirements to pursuing co-op as a graduate student. I'll highlight one of them is that you can't have your first semester be a co-op placement, and you can't have your last semester be a co-op placement. And that is intentional because co-op is designed, from the start has been designed to be integrated with your education. So we want you to have a few courses under your belt. You kind of have those in the back of your mind when you go out to your placement. And then you come back, and with your experience and the skills that you've gained as part of your placement, you then bring those back into the classroom. And it's this wonderful virtuous cycle of having an experience in the working world enrich your education. There's a minimum GPA, some score requirements, and then there's a course as well, and you can read those on your own time. Next slide, please.
Sorry about that. Had a little glitch.
No problem. Yeah, so over to you, Emily.
Awesome. All right, everyone. So at this point in the presentation, we do have one of our graduate student ambassadors here joining us. We have Orja Shetty. So for the next couple of slides, we would love to plug our graduate ambassador program. We have students who are on ground in each one of our graduate programs who are available to answer questions for you. So I'll pass it over to Orja to tell you a little bit about what she does and how she can assist. And then I'll go on to mention some additional resources that are available. Thank you for joining us today.
Emily. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Orja Shetty. I'm a second-year civil engineering master student in water, environment, and coastal system. My interest lies in wastewater remediation. I'm originally from Mumbai. So as a graduate student, I help incoming international masters as well as PhD students transition from their home country to the US and manage the social media for the team. And so if you have any queries about like your academic programs such as course requirement, registration, deadlines, or specific coursework, I can provide you information on that. And recently I completed a 6-month co-op at Cambridge Water Department, which has been incredibly enriching and valuable experience for me. So if you want any advice or like how to go about it, I'm here to help you with that. And moving to a new city for your education can be exciting as well as daunting. So if you have questions about safety, cost of living, culture, transportation, or how to navigate, then you can email me. I can also assist you in understanding the housing situations, like the options available in Boston, including on-campus as well as off-campus housing, about like different neighborhoods and apartment hunting tips, etc. So if you have any any queries, please reach out to me. I'll make sure to write my email ID in the chat box. And feel free to follow our Instagram page, which is NUCOE Ambassadors, for all new updates. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We do have a link right here to the brand new Ambassador website. It's recently been revamped, and all of the links to the social media pages, excuse me, and how to get in contact with our graduate ambassadors such as Orja are available there. Again, this is basically what we just covered. Great resources for asking ambassadors. Of course, about co-op, like Orja said, she recently completed a co-op, which is amazing. That's always a great kind of intro to chatting with our ambassadors, as well as things that were also mentioned, like moving to Boston, program questions. Of course, there's going to be some questions that you have that are more geared towards the admissions office, someone like myself, regarding your specific application and requirements for applying. But to get to know the student culture, student life, and what it's like to be in a program day to day, our ambassadors are absolutely the best resources. And again, here, some opportunities for engagement. The website was linked on the prior page, but this is a wonderful QR code to go ahead and scan right now. You'll have it right up and available, and it'll be linked to all of the resources regarding our ambassadors and everything that they can assist you with. All right, so I'm going to end off the presentation with some general housekeeping and how to proceed if you're a prospective student. We do have applications that are live and open right now. If you do plan to apply for spring 2025, the final deadline there is going to be October 1st for all international students applying from the US. And the deadline for domestic students is a little bit later on December 1st. If you're applying to enter next fall 2025, the deadline there for PhD applicants is December 1st and January 15th for anyone applying to a master's program. The deadline for international students outside of the US is going to be June 1st and August 1st for domestic US and Canadian students, and then July 1st for international students inside the US and Canada. All right, and just to briefly cover the admissions requirements, of course, a question we get quite often is for application fee waiver codes, and for attending this session today, we do have a code available for you. That code is highlighted right here, so this is a great slide to screenshot, although I am going to go into just a tiny bit more detail about this code and the parameters for using it on the next slide, so just stay tuned for a minute there. We do require 2 letters of recommendation. We prefer academic references when available, but professional references will suffice as well. At the time of application, we do require an unofficial transcript, and then we will seek official transcripts a little bit later on in the process. I actually had a private question in the chat that I will just briefly cover as it relates to this. If you're applying, say, for a PhD program and you're currently undergoing a master's program, you don't yet have a final transcript, submit your transcript thus far during the application process, even though it's not complete yet. Like I said, we will follow up later on in the process to make sure we get those completed transcripts, but it is important for us to see what programs you have in progress or what programs you've already completed at the time of your application. We do require a statement of purpose, so why you're interested in the specific program and Northeastern as well. Parameters there, usually no more than 2 pages. Our faculty members do have a lot of applications to read, and while your statement of purpose is extremely important to the application process, we don't want to have more than 2 pages there. Please submit your resume at the time of application. You can see there is a faint line through the GRE requirement, and at this time we are not requiring the GRE for application or admission. And if you're joining us from a country outside the US that is not on the list of exceptions, we do require an English proficiency test, and the 3 that we do accept are IELTS, TOEFL, and Duolingo. All right, as promised, here is a little bit more of a guideline on using this application fee waiver code, Apply COE 2025. This can be used for spring or fall admission. Please note that this waiver should be input in the application information tab. So it needs to be entered prior to submitting your application. Once you've submitted this, there will be a yes/no question to answer, asking you if you have the fee waiver code. Of course, make sure you select yes. Once the box appears, please input the code. Note that the code is case sensitive and must be entered exactly as it appears. If it's misspelled or entered incorrectly, when our enrollment management team is going through, it won't be flagged as a fee waiver code. So it's just very important that you enter it exactly as you see here, and very important that you enter it prior to hitting submit on your application. We cannot enter it after you've already submitted your application. So just to keep that in mind when applying. And last but not least, more ways to keep in touch with us. This is emails where you can contact our admissions office. So again, any questions regarding your own specific application or the process in general. We have wonderful FAQs on our website. If we don't get to your question today, or if you think of a question after the fact, the FAQ page is a great place to start, or you can just send us an email. We'll be happy to answer that for you. And again, more information on how to contact our wonderful graduate student ambassadors. And that brings us to the end of the presentation. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. Thank you to Professor Andy Myers and Amy Miller, who did unfortunately have to leave. I do believe we also have an additional professor joining us. We have Professor Nancy Varney, who is here. And I don't know if she had to leave. I know she was on in the background watching. So if you're still here and you want to say hello, oh, I do see you. If you want to say hello, I'd love to introduce you now, and then I will dive into the Q&A.
Sure, thank you. I apologize for being late. I had class this morning. But I am Dr. Nancy. I teach a lot of our structural engineering courses, both graduate and undergraduate, and I'm also helping develop new courses looking at really focusing on what you'll see once you get out into your careers, pairing in engineering with resiliency, sustainability, and just making everything fun and relatable. So I have a lot of fun here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining in today. The chat is available for questions that you may have. We also have the Q&A feature. Looks like more people are preferring the chat today, which is amazing. So I'm just going to go through. I answered the question regarding the transcripts. Looks like another follow-up question came through. Does the same apply if you're an undergrad and pursuing a master's? Yes. If obviously your undergrad degree isn't going to be complete at the time you're applying for your master's, so submit your transcript, your most up-to-date transcript at the time of application. And then later on in the process, or once you've graduated from undergrad, we will follow up and ensure that we have your not only official transcript, but your completed transcript as well. It's a great question. Any others, please feel free to type them in the chat. And Andy, if you have anything else to add before the end of the presentation, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, we'll welcome questions now or later. Professor Miller, Professor Varney, and I are all available, and you can find our emails on the website. So please feel free to reach out if you have questions that arise later. So I see one that just came up. Do we have assistantships available? At the PhD level, every one of our PhD students receives an assistantship. So if you're admitted to the PhD program, that means you're also offered an assistantship. At the master's level, the support for master's students comes in a few varieties. We offer scholarships to some of our master's students, and everyone is automatically eligible for those. You don't need to kind of apply specifically to a scholarship. We also have course grader positions, which is an hourly compensated position that is available to some master's students. And that's something you can apply for. And we have a whole process in place after your first semester. And then, as we talked about, another way to kind of support yourself during your education is with a co-op placement. So co-op placements can be 4, 6, or 8 months, and they're compensated competitively. So you will be paid for your full-time co-op position. Emily, I wasn't monitoring the chat if there was other ones that came in, but I see them coming.
Definitely. Yeah. A great question and a common one that we get that came through is if a student is applying for a PhD program, do they have to contact a supervisor or faculty member prior to entering or applying for the program? I do handle a lot of the PhD applications. So off the top of my head, I will say no, that's not a requirement, with the caveat that you are more than welcome to reach out to faculty that you have interest in working with. They don't always have positions available, but it definitely doesn't hurt to send an email. Andy, I'll let you elaborate on that a little as well.
Yep. So I can completely agree. Definitely not required. Doesn't hurt. Can help. In addition, even if you haven't reached out to a faculty member, the application allows you, for the PhD program, allows you to indicate up to 3 faculty whose research you're interested in. And so that's a helpful flag for us to make sure that we direct your application to the faculty members that are most likely to have a mutual interest with you. So I encourage you to use that part of the application.
Great question. And as a follow-up there, is it necessary to contact the faculty to secure funding? Again, for a PhD program, if you are accepted into the PhD program, that is all fully funded for all accepted students. So it's not necessary to contact a faculty prior to application. And again, if you are granted acceptance, that means you are going to be paired with a faculty advisor and receiving full funding. And that is specific to PhD. Again, for masters, we talked a little bit about scholarship opportunities there. Another funding or scholarship question: what are the considerations when evaluating students for departmental scholarships?
Yeah, so it's your undergraduate record, your kind of interests, and what you say in your statements, and kind of how that fits with our department, and your kind of future aspirations. It's really hard to answer that in a kind of clean, well-defined way. It's your overall application. So in all the kind of measures we're using to decide whether we'll offer admission or not are also being used to decide if we're offering a scholarship or not.
Thank you. I did just put back up the application fee waiver code slide. Once again, please make sure to take a screenshot or at least write down this fee waiver code before exiting the session. Please just remember that it is case sensitive. I know sometimes it's hard. The application system's a little wonky, and it's definitely not our intention to, tell everyone that they've entered it wrong or anything. It's unfortunately just a very particular situation. So I recommend taking a screenshot if possible there. Another question was, where can we learn more about research faculty? Again, I'll put this slide up where you can access our website. You can specifically go to the Department of Civil Environmental Engineering. They have their own web pages where a lot of the faculty that were featured in today's presentation are, contact information, and research information is also available there on the website. See, are there any opportunities for bachelor's degree to PhD? Yep, there is no master's required to apply for a PhD. If you've obtained a bachelor's degree, you can apply directly to a PhD. There's no barriers there. And last question I see here is, I understand that MS in Climate Science and Engineering is still new, but are there any ongoing research projects associated with that program?
Yeah, great question. So we don't kind of formally have research projects tied to our graduate MS program offerings. But that said, the content that we're offering in each of our programs is tied to the interests of the faculty, which are tied to kind of the opportunities and needs we see in the field. So the fact that we offered that program starting this year, joint with the College of Science, indicates that we have many faculty who are working jointly with the College of Science, who are working on climate science and engineering issues. I would say, of the themes that are pervasive throughout our entire department, that is among the highest. So we have dozens and dozens of projects that would fall within the realm of climate science and engineering, and I'm happy to kind of talk more with you separately about that.
Thank you. Wonderful questions, everyone. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to join this session today. We are just about at our time. So I again want to thank Professor Andy Myers, Amy Miller, who did have to hop off, and Professor Nancy Varney, who joined us today. Thank you to Orja, our student ambassador, and for David Dieter from the Civil Department for joining us. Any questions that you have after the fact, you can reach out to myself with the general COE admissions email that was shared. I know some of the faculty have shared their own personal emails, and if you send us a question that's more geared towards faculty, we are happy to make the connection and pass that along. Our student ambassadors are again more than happy to assist you and answer your questions as well. Thank you again for joining today. Best of luck if you are joining any other sessions today. And we look forward to hearing from you and seeing your applications in the future. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you all.
Thank you.
Bye.